Hi everyone, I'm Tom Griffin, I'm a film critic and you're watching The Armchair Auteur. This is an ongoing video series I do where we talk about new movies, old movies, screenplay analysis, that sort of thing. So if you like movies and film culture and like to see somebody pick those things apart, please consider subscribing. Today I'm reviewing the new Apple TV Plus film Cherry that reunites Avengers Endgame directors the Russo brothers with Tom Holland in a film that is intended to be as far removed from the MCU as humanly possible. I say intended to be. Many directors prefer to follow up a big movie with something on a smaller, more intimate scale. After making the then largest scale production of his career, 2005's Batman Begins, Christopher Nolan took a break before returning to Gotham by making 2006's The Prestige, a movie that arguably remains his best work.
How this nigga working like he got a fucking twin though.
Though it's not going to go that way anymore, Ryan Coogler intended to follow up the massive success of Black Panther with a smaller film co-written with Ta-Nehisi Coates. So what do the Russo brothers do after directing two of the biggest movies of all time? An intimate crime drama about an Iraq war vet turned drug addict who has to start robbing banks to get his next fix. Only they chose to make it a comically stylized epic starring Tom Holland, who it will be impossible to not see as Peter Parker throughout the film. Cherry is adapted from Nico Walker's novel of the same name, itself inspired by his own life. It follows Holland as an unnamed protagonist the film's credits call Cherry. The short and sweet of it is that Cherry is a regular, somewhat disaffected college student who falls for a girl who decides to move away to Canada, and, while distraught, he chooses to enlist in the military before she winds up choosing to stay and marry him anyway. He becomes a medic and sees real combat that leaves him with crippling PTSD, which leads to he and his wife becoming addicts, which leads to him robbing banks to pay for their scores, which leads to a truly depressing cycle of exponentially worse things happening over and over and over. I hope you can understand what a gentle mercy my very brief summation of the movie's narrative truly is, because there is absolutely nothing short and sweet about Cherry. This movie clocks in at 2 hours and 20 minutes. It takes a half an hour for him to get to basic training. It takes a full hour for OxyContin to become his gateway to heroin. It takes an hour and a half for him to rob his first bank. And that is the film's biggest tragedy. I'm going to spend the rest of this video saying some very negative things about this movie. But before all of that, I just want to say that if Cherry, as a movie, primarily focused on what the last 45 minutes of the movie focuses on, about the bank robbings, about the addiction, about that whole spiral. If that was the whole movie, if the first 90 minutes of this movie were condensed into something considerably shorter, by the time we got to that part, this movie would end up being pretty solid, something I would feel comfortable recommending. Instead, it is an overlong, overbaked, tonally messy trash fire that everyone involved should be deeply ashamed to have their legal names attached to. I consider myself an abolitionist, at heart, but I truly think the Russo brothers should go to prison for this movie. To really dig into why the film fails, we have to set aside the fact that its runtime is criminally bloated. Sure, Billy Wilder was able to get witness for the prosecution to clock in at only 116 minutes, but I guess the Russo brothers really needed that extra half an hour to tell a story that is somehow 10 times simpler. But no, the length could have theoretically been forgiven if this dime-store buildings Roman had a visual language that suited its mawkish tenor. Cherry is, above all else, a painfully maudlin story directed with the energy and forced dynamism of a music video from the mid-2000s. No matter how depressing each development feels or how bleak Holland's hollow voiceover narration gets, you can never fully shake the sense that at any moment, the Russos are going to whip pan over to the needlessly enthusiastic violin player from Yellowcard, or that the fourth wall will break even further and reveal this entire endeavor to be an elaborate TV commercial for car insurance. The decision to stage every single scene with showy visuals, incongruous scene transitions, and fussed over motifs makes sense when you think about the massive chip on the Russos' respective shoulders. These are two guys whose charming work on subversive comedy shows like Arrested Development and Community helped them get the keys to the MCU kingdom, but who otherwise only have helmed deeply missable feature films like Welcome to Collinwood and You, Me, and Dupree. They clearly have taken a novel that connected to readers by being an intimate and distinct exploration of addiction and trauma and tried to give it the bravura style every movie that thinks it's Goodfellas has attempted to be for the last 30 years. Who makes theme park rides now, Mr. Scorsese? But in their try-hard approach to making the story feel bigger and more complex than it truly needs to be, they prove a rather depressing truth. That they're not secret indie auteurs whose blandness is the result of Kevin Feige's endless tinkering, but that perhaps the only reason those movies were so successful in the first place was because of his guiding hand, and these guys aren't the next franchise moguls they've been purported to be, but a pair of semi-talented dudes who should stick to helming comedies made by smarter and more creative individuals. Their comedic instincts are still on display, sure, but they are employed so awkwardly that they undercut almost every moment of genuine pathos. There's a scene where Thomas Lennon shows up as a doctor, and his casting alone makes it immediately feel like a parody movie. This is a movie that waits until roughly 80 minutes to first introduce the main character's mother, and even then it's only in a pretty quick scene. It doesn't see a reason to reckon with or explore his family life that would lead a breakup to cause him to enlist in the armed forces, but every scene leading up to the meat of the real drama is jam-packed with supposedly clever asides to shit that doesn't provide useful background color or substance. Why do I need this scene about a job he held for only 2 weeks, or need to know anything about the people who work there? Do we really need this much time spent in his basic training if everything here is just going to feel like a YouTuber condensing the first half of Full Metal Jacket into a prank video? The extreme style and reckless visuals led to this tweet from a film critic who I am sure means well, but is deeply disrespecting Michael Bay.
Sweetie, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that an ugly ass bitch like this would even say that. Oh my God.
Because say what you will about Michael Bay, his ridiculous style is at least his, and none of his many imitators can come close to matching it. I don't know what the fuck the Russos are doing, or even why they're doing it, and I'm not so sure they do either. Their creative decisions make every serious moment in this film feel like a bad inside joke.
And that is how we became addicts.
I know writers who use subtext, and they're all cowards.
When we do finally get to the third act, the picture begins to work much better, but by the time you get there, you're already so over the entire affair. The whole purpose of using a lot of these music video, TV commercial techniques is to get information across to the viewer faster and more efficiently, but instead of dispensing with much of the story quickly in montages, it just uses montage language to still drag out every skippable chapter in this tale. This approach is fine for a book, but too much of the narration is lifted directly from the source material, with nothing in the words additive to the images, so it feels redundant and cloying. Lastly, I want to address Tom Holland's casting. When Judas and the Black Messiah came out, some of the chiefest criticisms I found from others were in Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield's ages. They were both considerably older than the subjects they were playing, and them looking and feeling like grown men, for some, distracted from the tragedy of how young these individuals truly were at the time. Cherry casting a 24-year-old Tom Holland as a young veteran-turned-addict is a good choice, and that it forces the viewer to remember how many of these young men do still look like boys, and aren't 38-year-old leading men. But the Russo's glib approach to the story that can't settle into a consistent tone undercuts his work here. I won't call it a great performance, obviously, but you're really cutting him off at the knees presenting this dark story in this manner because it just feels like you're watching Spider-Man shoot up between his toes. If the Russos had a more distinct vision and the script mined the novel to better explore the systemic issues that impacted the main character, this could have been a pitch-black comedy, a picture whose nihilism could be properly weaponized to speak to something larger than itself. Instead, you're left with a movie that starts to show you why banks are fucked up, then forgets about it halfway, only to sullenly try to make you feel bad for the banks being robbed later. It's just a mess. This movie ruined so much goodwill for me. With the Russos, with Apple TV Plus, with humanity. I hate that I watched this movie, and I hope that anyone that watches this video learns from my mistake and avoids it entirely. Defund the Russos. That's it. I don't have anything else to say about this piece of shit movie. I hated it. It sucks. Please don't see it. If you see it, then that's on you. Tom Holland stands, please don't interact. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the little bell icon so you get notifications when I put out new videos. If you have any thoughts about the film or any of the stuff in general, you can talk to me below in the comments. I love talking to you all. And yeah, I hope you're all doing well, staying safe, being good to yourselves and each other, and wearing your masks. I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye.